I'm going to talk to you about how not to ever be resentful. Does that sound even possible to you? If you are somebody that struggles with resentment, I would say that probably sounds absolutely impossible. So, one of the things that we learned when I was in school to be a marriage and family therapist in my ethics courses was that I could never say yes to anything with a client that would leave a door open for me to become resentful. So I had to think about if a client asked for a reduced fee, I had to look at the client, think about the client's circumstances, and kind of fast forward and think, will I be resentful if I spend a lot of time with this client? If I agree to do therapy for a certain amount of money and it goes on longer, will I become resentful because I'm spending a lot of time with this client? Or say, for instance, the client had a job where the client made more money per hour than the client was wanting to pay me. I had a client who had a job where she probably made anywhere from $75 to $150, or lady who was a prospective client, I should say. She made probably $75 to $150 an hour in her profession. And she wanted to see me for $50 an hour. That was all she said she could afford. And I made a decision not to see that client. And the reason was because I knew at some point that I would not feel good about it. I would get to the point where I would think, she's making more per hour. I spent 6 years in school plus thousands of hours unsupervised training. And she didn't. She had a profession where she did training for about 9 months. And she's making more per hour than me. And it wasn't all about money, but that was just a little bit of an area where maybe I could get resentful. So I ethically had to tell her, no, I would not see her for that. If a client asked you to come in on a special day, maybe just for that client, or stay late, and that was something that at some point you could actually become resentful over, you had to say no. And, I think I learned a lot from that on my own personal life too. And that is, how can I make sure I'm not resentful for the things that I agree to do for people? So anytime that I'm doing anything in my life, I ask myself, will I be resentful? If I give money to an organization, to a cause, if I give money to a child or to a family member, I first ask myself, what are my expectations? Do I have unspoken expectations? Do I have unidentified expectations? Do I expect this child to do something specific with the money? If I do, I need to identify that ahead of time. I need to have a discussion about that. If I say yes to a child staying in my house for a while, or coming home to live, or me, doing something for that child, what is my expectation? Do I have an expectation that the child would do something in particular, or that the child would even thank me or appreciate it at a certain level or acknowledge it? I have to identify all of those expectations ahead of time so that I don't give it with the expectation that I will get that back. And then when I don't, I become resentful. I'm not talking about something that's weird. I'm talking about something that people do all the time. It is so common for us to give with an expectation that something would come back to us, that we would be given a thanks or an acknowledgement or mentioned in some way. Whatever that is. And if we don't do what we're doing without expectation, without any specific desire to have something happen, if we don't do that, we will end up with a resentment. There's a saying that says that an expectation is the beginning of a resentment. And that is so true. So we've got to recognize, if we have an expectation, we've got to either talk about it or get rid of the expectation. So at least identify those expectations. And then the other thing is to have ideas about, if I do something that I say yes to and I later regret it, I have to recognize that I have to own my yes. I have to own the fact that for whatever reason, I don't care if it's because I was pressured, I felt obligated, I felt guilty, I was in a weak moment, whatever it is, if I said yes, I don't have a right to a resentment because I was the one who said yes. It doesn't matter what it was. I do not allow myself a moment of indulging in a resentment. And if I ever feel it, I literally talk it through and tell myself, you said yes, you own it, learn from this, don't say yes the next time. So it doesn't matter what that is. There's a scripture in Ephesians 4:25-27. It says, therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of one body. In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold. How do we give the devil a foothold? When we allow ourselves to become resentful for something that we did or something we gave or something that we offered. So it again is those unexpressed resentments. So here's some questions to ask yourself. The next time you want to do something, do you have any expectations? Do you have any feelings about it that could lead to a resentment later? And don't do it if you don't feel good about it in any way. Okay, that's better for you to say no and not cause resentment to come into your relationship than it is for you to say yes and later become resentful. Okay, so again, this is how not to get resentful about what you do or give to other people. Now, not getting resentful about what they do to you, that's a completely different subject that we can talk about later. So thank you for watching these videos on Change My Relationship.